Welcome to this week's episode of The World According to Craig, where I welcome all kinds of amazing, incredible people who are more interesting and better than I am, and whose stories I'm really excited to hear. And this week, I welcome my good friend, James Ramsey. Thank you so much for joining us this week. I'm so appreciative.
Thank you so much for having me, Craig. That's quite a stretch of an introduction. But then again, I do introduce myself as a 10 every time I enter a room. So
there you go.
Here we are. Maybe it's just accurate.
Do you feel like you're on a talk show?
Yeah, I do. I feel important, which is really interesting. A really new feeling for me, gotta say.
So we're going to talk about those new feelings. We're going to talk about what it means to find yourself. We're going to talk about all of those pieces, but I'd love for people to get to know who you are as a person. I always like to start with like the backdrop, right? Because you are prototypical millennial, like back half of millennial.
I am a prototypical millennial. I played Pokemon. I was in my church choir. I complain about things, but don't do anything to really make a difference.
All right. So, but you grew up in sort of the modern day sense of what we would expect the world to be, right? Like you were biracial. You have an Asian mom and a white dad.
That's correct.
You grew up in a nuclear family.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't have any like plane crashes growing up.
I mean, I did live in the tri-state area for 9/11, so there was one big one. But
yes, but okay, yes, but you weren't on that one.
No.
Okay, and so how did you end up out here?
How did I ended up out here? I grew up in Connecticut. I like to describe myself as not only a 10, but
I like to say Connecticut is the Orange County of Southern California for those who are watching, which is why I think that you're from Orange County.
I mean, I basically went from one Orange County to another, Connecticut to Orange County. I moved there in high school. My dad got a new job, and so he moved me and my little brother and my mother across the country.
Okay.
In the middle of my sophomore year.
That had to be so like that. You have all of your friends, and now they're all gone, and you have to make new ones.
All gone. Never talk to them again. Yes, but at the same time, it was kind of exciting when you're, living.
We moved to California.
Yeah, and this is the time when the OC, like MTV, Laguna Beach, the real OC, like the Hills, all of that was.
So you are a prototypical millennial in that you were not only were living a millennial life, but then you lived the Hollywood version of the millennial life.
Oh yeah, I got to tell all my friends, I'm going to Orange County. I'm going to be someone important. Didn't happen, but I did get to live that proto-millennial dream of moving somewhere where I was right by Hollywood, right by Los Angeles, right by the beach.
So were you really excited about it? Like there's got to be a sense of excitement about it, but it also had to be like you were 14, 15?
I was 14.
Like I was terrified as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old. That's a separate issue. I did have a lot of trauma. No plane crashes, but a lot of trauma. But was it scary?
I think it was scary, but I think I also, for the viewers out there, I'm a middle child. My older brother opted to stay and finish out a senior year in Connecticut. So I became the eldest child by coming to Orange County.
Okay.
So of course, I was nervous. I was worried I wasn't going to make any friends. I came out in Connecticut right before we moved to California because if it didn't work, I could always go back in the closet.
Okay.
But no, I kind of took that older brother mentality of I have to be strong for my little brother. My mom quit her job as a public school teacher to make the move work. And, my dad was very excited about the move.
Okay.
And so I felt like there had to be parity in the family. And so someone had to just, be excited, but be tempered.
So here's the thing. I'm the oldest you can be and still be a millennial. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not really a millennial, right? Like, and I don't have to deal with all of the memes and the jokes of those things. And I find myself not really a part of that generation in some ways. Mm-hmm. But you grew up square smack dab in the middle of this transformation of society, and the biggest transformation since the boomers, as we're like told. And there's a lot of pressure about what you can and should be. You are going from one Orange County to the next, which is sort of what America should be in the 50s and 60s and 90s, and again now in the 2020s. Although a lot of people are very frustrated with Orange County at the moment, it is not like Connecticut anymore in some respects. Did you feel any of that pressure growing up?
Oh, absolutely. I think when it comes to growing up as a millennial, especially when you're growing up in middle school, in high school, everything is a competition. You're always competing to go to the best college. You're competing to be interesting in general and draw the focus to yourself. I think that was a huge part about growing up as a millennial. A lot of the memes right now joke that you you go and get your bachelor's degree and then you work at an entry level job because you need a bachelor's degree to do that. And that was even prevalent as a high school student. That was prevalent when I was in college, coming out of it. Like, I took an unpaid internship at the Museum of Contemporary Art as my first job, and I worked at a Pier 1 to make it work.
Okay.
Just to...
Pier 1's kind of contemporary art.
It's contemporary. Well, I guess not anymore. I'm bankrupt. But...
Oh, R.I.P. Pier 1. The pandemic casualties. So that makes sense, but you feel that pressure. And I think we hear a lot from influencers and from celebrities, and you hear their story of like, here's what it was like to grow up and here's all the things. And for me, that lacks a little bit of like, shall we say, a little bit of relatability, a little bit of understanding, because yes, it's a lovely story and I don't discount their story, but I don't really want to hear from somebody who has 30 million followers and $70 million about like their struggle growing up. I want to hear about somebody that I can talk to, that I can understand. That to me feels like you.
No, I definitely agree with you. I think the other thing is that a lot of them don't really have that. I kind of decided growing up, especially graduating college and coming to my own, that social media wasn't really real. You could use it to keep in touch with people you care about, and that's how I came up on Facebook. I got a Facebook account to keep in touch with all of my Connecticut friends when I moved to California. That was the entire reason I got on social media. But I mean, you look at these people's manufactured lives and it's fun. I love looking at the memes, but is it sparking joy to Marie Kondo? Is it bringing you joy? And for some of them, definitely. For some of them, maybe there's an internal pressure to show that they are succeeding.
They may not be looking below the surface. The self-awareness might be a little light. Who knows? No judgment. Just throwing out possibilities.
Them. I just know me. And I know for me that I think it'd be exhausting to keep up with that on social media.
So where do you get to the point in this? And this is really the conversation for the day, which is, where do you get to the point where you look at the world around you and as an everyday person, right? And what's normal is abnormal, right? And so when I say normal, I don't mean like normalized society, but as an everyday, ordinary, normal person, you look at all of this and you're like, screw it. I'm going to have a revelation. And that revelation is I want to be me. And I'm not going to feel the pressure to do this. Because it's really funny to me when I see an influencer talk about like not looking at other people's conceptions. And I'm like, I want to be like, okay, lady, you are literally the other people that you were talking about. Like you are in no position to talk about other people's conceptions, but you are, because you're not an influencer. You're influential, but you're not an influencer.
Thank you. All of it is a stretch,
right?
But I think a part of it is I came out when I was 15. I came out in high school, which even as a millennial, that was early.
What year was that?
I came out in 2006.
Okay. Yeah, that was still, I mean, you were still in Prop 8 territory.
Still before Prop 8.
Yeah.
Still doing my thing, but I came out early and I spent a lot of my early gay life, as a lot of us gay men do, trying to live up to other people's expectations of what a gay man should be. And trying
so many abs expectations that I cannot meet.
I mean, not to bring in, my mom's Chinese side into this, but trying to be the model minority. Trying to
double minority, both gay and half Asian, so
the quarter Asian,
yeah,
but even weirder in some ways. But I think we spend a lot of time as gay men attempting to live by other people's rules and attempting to show, especially during that time, attempting to show that we aren't scary, that we're normal, that we are deserving of rights and are deserving of love and are deserving of not just tolerance, but acceptance. And so for me, that journey was really growing up and realizing that living by other people's expectations for how many people I can date, to bring Taylor Swift into it, how many, who I can date, what activities I can do, how gay my accent can be is exhausting. And at some point you realize that you just have to make yourself happy at the end of the day.
When did that come about for you?
I'd say probably sophomore year in college.
Okay, that's a long journey.
It was a long journey, but
It's 6 years of angst.
I went to Orange County, which was like, for those of you who don't know California, it's one of the more conservative counties.
Yes. Very full of anti-maskers.
Yes. A lot of Trumpers right now. They do go Democrat sometimes. I want to give them credit. But it's a more conservative area. And I wanted to, when I moved, I understood that. And especially with, being a high school student, being young, being the first out person at my high school.
Okay.
When I moved there, wanting to be palatable and wanting people to like me.
So you went from you want to be palatable. You find yourself adjusting to the world to try to be palatable, and then 6 years later, you're like, okay, this is me. How do you get there? Like, I mean, I think that's the practical question. Is like we talk a lot about finding yourself and becoming yourself, but how?
We want to say through a lot of soul searching and like deep diving in love, but what it really is you live up for that for so long that you end up failing miserably.
Okay.
Through, at that point in my life, like sophomore year in college, it was literally everything. I came into college being a biology major because you needed to be a doctor to be successful, or just, someone else with a professional degree that defines success by a very limited narrative. You try to date all the right people who are going to put you on the right path in life, and then you realize that you're just a nightmare to everyone you're being around.
That's less than ideal.
It's less than ideal, but in my case, that's what ended up happening is you realize that you're not making yourself happy and you're really not making the people around you happy either.
Was there a day or did someone pull you aside and be like, James, I don't think you're happy?
I think it was more of a slow burn and a lot of just general disappointments. My grades weren't really where I wanted them. I was used to having them be
the perfect middle child.
Perfect middle child. The perfect middle child. I kept lowering my standards when it came to dating and accepting more and more that I really wasn't comfortable with, but I wanted to because I wanted to show that I was capable of being in a relationship and capable of being loved, and that gay men wouldn't just flip from one flower to the other, metaphorically speaking.
Still a concern.
Or it doesn't.
Not with you, but with not with you, with the world. So this slow burn comes to fruition sophomore year in college. Mm-hmm. Is there a moment like is that when you switched your major because you don't work in biology and you're not a doctor?
I switched. Yeah, I would think that was the biggest move. Is I switched to art history because I had always enjoyed it. I'd taken AP art history in high school and done well.
Where I grew up, art history was not a subject. Just to be clear,
it was a subject, maybe not for your school in Indiana.
No, it definitely.
Go to a private school in Connecticut, Phillips Exeter.
Yes, valid. I mean and that's what's interesting about this is there's some sense of like amazing privilege to this, but the privilege doesn't make it any easier. Like if anything, it also adds a different kind of pressure. Like I had the pressure of poverty, right? Like, and as opposed to privilege, but I am smart enough to recognize that the pressure of poverty and the pressure of privilege are cousins to each other. And one is neither better or worse than the other. They are all just to try to compare that type of thing on the merits is nonsensical because that's a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in, but I'll also say, we have to acknowledge that you're right. This entire story is unbelievably privileged. A kid going from biology to art history at a public university, but it is unbelievably privileged, and I love it too. It's my story. I'm 10, but no, I think To answer your point, I think that it is unbelievably privileged, but privilege and oppression are also subjective. I think we can go back and forth and say who's had it tougher, and I think the answer is usually obvious, like poverty usually trumps privilege when it comes to who has it tougher. But at the same time, if you're trying to understand someone and you're trying to get to someone on their level, you do need to understand where they came from, what challenges that they overcame. I mean, I think a universal experience for gay men is bullying and being bullied. And just because some people had it tougher doesn't mean other people weren't restricted by that fear or by that experience in a way that they had to personally overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never a fan of like the who had it tougher. I mean, there are certainly people who had it tougher than I did. But I don't know. Then again, I was an impoverished orphan. I'm
not saying that like it's a card you can pull, but I'm saying it's like a pretty good card.
It's okay. It's okay. But I'm also, because I've had that, I recognize that perspective is really important, and that what can feel like an insane amount of pressure to me, like something different that wouldn't feel so much pressure to me, can feel like an insane amount of pressure to anyone else. And you find yourself in this world and there's expectations around you. How do you strip out those expectations to find you?
I mean, for me, it's just deciding what you can live with and what you can't. Like in between of this biology and this art history, I took a computer science class, only class I've ever failed in my life. I failed miserably. Like I said, a slow burn, a lot of failures. Failure's a really good way to figure out what you're good at and what you can tolerate. But I did very well for 4 classes. I programmed the computer to say "Hello World." Genius right there. But
I did not. I took a typing class. That's where it limited in high school. We had do you remember we had a computer classroom? That's where all the computers were.
Yeah.
Now there's not. Now there's just all.
Well, now they have they're doing it all the time.
Right. Now every classroom is only on a computer. Valid. Okay. So you fail around a lot and you land on your feet, because I view you and I look at you and I say, this is a guy who's landed on his feet, right? Like who is embracing who he is, who is on a journey, as we all are. Like, I don't think anybody's fully baked or shouldn't be.
I mean, I did go to UC Santa Cruz, so I will say I know a lot of people who are fully baked.
Yep. They may not be aware of who they are. So that's valid. So when you exit Santa Cruz and you come back down, do you feel like, when you live in LA, do you feel like you've found yourself at that moment? Is it just, I mean, you had an unpaid internship at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Pier 1, so the struggle was still happening.
It was a struggle. I lived in Orange County at the time with my parents and literally drove to LA every day and then back down for a shift in Orange County at Pier 1. It was a challenge, but it also felt, I had my first internship, and it was a fundraising internship. I had an internship the year before at the Huntington Library, which is an incredible institution. I love it. In their curatorial department, I did not love it. Just was not for me, which when you get an art history degree and you realize you don't love curatorial work
Valid. That's a little bit like going to law school and not becoming a lawyer.
I mean, you can at least use that. I mean, art history is pretty narrow theoretically.
Okay.
On where you can take that step. But no, I was lucky to, have experiences in college where I was planning events, where I was writing grants, and where I was asking people for money. And so I was able to find that niche and realize it was something that I could do well, but not only could I do well, I could keep doing it for a while.
Do you like doing it?
Yeah.
Because you're really good at it. I know, speaking as a donor to a charity that you used to work for, you're very good at your job. So you work in philanthropy now.
I do.
And you're very good at it. Which is kind of an unusual world to find yourself in, where you're helping people find themselves through their donations, or express themselves through their donations about the things that they love and the things that they want to do. You're kind of, in a way, you have to pull out the very things that you've discussed and discovered about yourself, which is like what you love to do, what you want to embrace, all of those pieces.
Absolutely. I think I mean, I think one of the keys to philanthropy, if anyone is interested in anyone is listening, the key isn't asking people for money. The key is to generate passion and to direct passion.
Do you think you're stronger in that role? That are you good at it? This is an obvious question. Softball, tee up. Are you stronger in that role because you went through that process? Because there's so many people who don't go through that process.
No, absolutely. I think I'm strong in that role for that reason. You're right. I think I'm also strong in that role because I know what I don't like. And I think especially when you're looking to direct your philanthropy, which I know both of us have, when you're looking to give back. And I always say one of the most important things you can do if you're supporting a nonprofit is to give financially, to put some of your skin in the game and say, I really support you. I know there's some organizations that I've volunteered with or I've donated to because a friend has asked me to that I didn't really resonate with.
Right.
But there's some that I absolutely donate to every year and I love, and I'm young, but I wouldn't be surprised to take a volunteer leadership position with them in the future because I know that I like it. I know that I care about it, which is something I had to grow and lean into.
So finding something, liking it, caring about it, knowing what you don't like, now you're embarking on the next stage of life. Like you're a grown up, right? Which is a scary thought for all of us. Not you, but just all of us being all of us being a grown up is terrifying. Do you feel the same pressures? Do you feel when you look at what your life is supposed to become or what people say it's supposed to become versus what you want it to become? Do you feel the same pressures you did growing up, or is it like a different ball game?
I think
does it ever go away? Does it ever get better?
I will say it gets better. I think it gets more manageable. I think there's always pressures like you get your job, you're in your dream, you're in a career that you enjoy, you're making good money, you can pay your rent. And then someone's like, so what are you doing for retirement? And
No, sir.
Like, I'd rather not. I'd rather not deal with this hate that you're bringing to my life. But it's something you have to think about and you have to deal with. And then it's the question of, are you doing it on the right scale? Are you hitting the marks you need to hit? But at the same time, it's about you. It's, am I taking care of myself? That's the question. So I think the question gets simpler of, what do I need to do? Or am I impressing other people? And it's, am I taking care of myself? Which on a micro level can some days be, I'm going to sleep in and stay in bed and look at my phone and play video games all day. Or other times can be like, I'm feeling a little bit stuck in a rut. I need to put myself out there in a big way. And it can be personal, it can be professional, it can be artistic.
Right.
But you just, at some points, you know that it's time for a move, and knowing that feeling through experience, that it's time to go, that it's time to do something else is invaluable. And
well, that's really incredible. And what's interesting to me about this is I think there's a phenomenal lesson that everybody can relate to, right? Which is this finding yourself, this failing, like it can be tempting to view failures as just failures, but when you view failures as steps on the way to finding yourself, like the computer science class was essential for art history, and then you show up to be, what art history majors do and curate a museum, and you're like, oh crap, this is not what I want to do. Like I can see like how that the repeated failure you could view and you could spin out, but you didn't spin out. Those failures led you on that path. I think there's something really awesome and magical about the fact that like failures were just attempts in different directions. And now as you look at who you are as like a fully fleshed human being who like feeds himself and is employed and all of this
corporeal body.
Yes. But you now have gone from trying to find yourself to trying to take care of yourself and and center yourself. And maybe that's the lesson for everybody, which is that there's always work, but the work, as you say, gets more manageable.
Yeah. There's always work, but you get more prioritization and direction as you kind of get older. You're able to say, like Marie Kondo, your life, this brings me joy. This is going to Goodwill. This is going to no one. This is going straight in the trash.
I haven't watched it, but now I feel like I need to. But I love that idea. And I'm so grateful that you came on today to talk about it. I'm so grateful that you decided that you would be willing to share your story, because I think that everybody has a story, not just that's interesting, but that we can all learn from. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate you stroking my ego and telling me I'm interesting. Like, God, I could do this every week.
Well,
I probably will.
Perfect. Well, you'll have to tune in next week. And thank you so much for tuning in to The World According to Craig for another amazing, incredible, wonderful time with a friend of mine. I hope they become a friend of yours, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to The World According to Craig, where you'll never find a celebrity, because I believe that real people's stories are just as interesting and a lot more relatable. If you've got 10 million followers, that's awesome. Use that platform. I'm going to give this one to the stories that I want to hear and I think that are really incredible.